All right, we are here. Sorry for the short delay, everybody, but welcome back to Interoperability Unlocked, where we share insights from the intersection of trust and community in all things healthcare data. To say that the first month of 2026 has been full of healthcare news is kind of the understatement of the year so far. But in addition to all that is shiny, there are important regulatory changes that are sort of shaping the future of interop. So to help us wade through some of the implications, we are thrilled to have Ryan Howells of Leavitt Partners with us today. Ryan, do you want to give a brief intro for those that don't know you?
Yeah, Principal at Leavitt Partners, been here for 10 years, celebrating my 10-year anniversary this year, interestingly enough.
Wow, congrats.
And I thought we'd solve this problem before I'd been here a decade, but here we are, still here. So that's good. But I work on all stuff interop, mainly items related to federal policy, form alliances, try to get stuff done. Just like you guys.
Perfect. We're one and the same. So thank you. So let's dive in. The topic for today is regarding like the CMS Final Rules that are impacting interop this year. Including preparing for final rules that take effect this year. So let's start with some of them that are in place and what they mean. So for context, the first group of changes is with prior auth. They've already taken effect and have some downstream impacts on API requirements that are coming for 2027. Some of the impacts include strict deadlines for payers, which we were kind of just chatting about. 72 hours for urgent and expedited requests, 7 calendar days for standard requests. So Ryan, my question to you, what should the interop community care about these? And what are some of the broader impacts we can expect to the providers and patients?
So this is the CMS 0057 rule. And this rule...
that sounds exciting.
What?
Anything started with 00 is exciting. It's a license to kill.
True. That's true. Make sure you add the 5 in there so you're not confusing with James. That's exactly right. So here's what's interesting about the rule. We've done some work, as you guys know, in Utah on this, and it's the largest FHIR B2B pilot in the whole country, largest and oldest. We've been doing it for 3.5 years. And when we started that, we had to explain to people why having their own kind of FHIR server is actually a good idea. And that was like where we started. And when we started that process, we just said, okay, and then they're like, well, yeah, this makes a lot of sense. We can use it for multiple purposes. We can use it for non-EHR purposes. There's a whole bunch of reasons why that's a really good thing. And so then we had to wait for the procurement process, and then they had to procure solutions. That's what took a lot of time. But now we're actively testing. Here's what we've learned. We've learned, number one, if everyone goes away like they've done before and implements this prior auth rule, we're just going to have more portals. They're just going to be FHIR enabled. And when we got people together at the table, what we heard loud and clear was the providers, and interestingly enough from the payers, and by the way, we're doing this now in 12 different states beyond Utah, and we're hearing the same thing across the board, is that the individual providers are like, I don't want another portal. All I want is a single user interface that's payer agnostic, that routes me to the right payer, and then I'm going to enter the information and get a return. And you can do that in a TEFCA-like model like you guys have at Commonwealth. So that's number one. The second thing is the payers came back and said, we don't want to build another portal because nobody's using it. They're still faxing and calling us, right? And the patient's like, just give me my answer, right? Why do I have to wait 3 to 5 days or whatever it is, 72 hours for this to happen? The good news is if you implement this correctly, the people that have, like Anna Taylor, as you guys know, at Multicare and others that have been in production for 3 years, they get responses in real time. 93% of the time, they get the answer back, either yes or no. 93% of the time, which means if we can get the APIs installed and we can do it correct way, we can get answers in real time. Last thing I'll say is, in order for that to work, it takes collaboration. Collaboration like you guys have at Commonwealth, collaboration like we're trying to do at the state level. It takes collaboration, and and last I checked, payers and providers don't like each other that much. Like they don't like golf together and like hang out in places, because usually they're at a table yelling at each other on rates. And so what we have found is we've said, we're going to get together. Nobody's talking about financing or pricing or contracts. And we're just talking about what we all have to do here and how we make it easier for everyone, payers, providers, and patients. This rule is if we do it correctly, it's going to represent more cost savings and more eliminating of administrative waste than really almost anything we've ever done, which is really cool, but we got to do it right.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think this will shift trust and accountability in healthcare at all? Or do you just kind of think that we're digitizing this process for efficiency?
I think it is going to increase trust, primarily because of the fact that it's going to require providers and payers to collaborate in a way that they haven't collaborated previously. And so I think that's going to be incredible. What we're finding is the trust is increasing with each other because, when they first got together, they thought, oh, are they going to use this information with me in my next contract negotiation? No. Let's just sit down at a table. Let's talk about what we need to do. Let's test and do it. I'll give you, for those who want to know more about this, so I call them out on their thing. Michael West over at Providence has done a phenomenal job in getting multiple payers to connect with Providence to do all kinds of value-based care related use cases. He's loving life. His bosses are loving life. The payers are loving life. And it's just what we've said, Court, what I've said personally is we have played this we've played this net zero sum game for too long. Winners and losers. Every time we get into a conversation in healthcare, it's about winners and losers. We've got to play a non-net zero sum game, which says, listen, we can all win here. Like this can be a win for everybody, patients, providers, payers. If we can do interop right, the tagline, you didn't pay me to say it, but like the tag, interop done right, you can do this correctly and it can be beneficial to everybody. And that's the real value of this.
Yeah, absolutely. Paul, do you have anything additional to add?
I mean, Ryan said everything Ryan says is fantastic, and every time I try and debate him whether he's wrong, I'm proven wrong anyway by vote and by general arguments. So I think that's right. I think we're taking it away from interop for a second. You'll probably ask me some interop questions as we go, and take it away from kind of the policy thing. There's an interesting reality here about declinations when it comes to prior auth or anything else, that even a no faster is better than a no taking 2 weeks, right? Yes. Because the clinical efficacy, the pain, the suffering, the distrust of the provider and the payer goes up when the patient just sits there going, what do I do? Right. Yes. And if you need to start an alternative path, because sometimes the prior auth that says no is correct, sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's just evidence. I don't have enough data. You're supposed to show me for this very expensive, Dupixent, something that I take right now. You need to prove that you've had 2 catastrophic failures on other things that are a lot less expensive, and but you only showed me 1. Oh, sorry, I had that. I just forgot to put that in the file. That's different than you're not eligible for this at all. Let's start talking about alternative pathways. And the faster we can get that, the faster the patient can engage with the original clinician, and the less whipsawing back and forth of administrative time spent. A lot of interop, the future of interop, should be focused on reduction of the administrative flows. The clinical flows, I think we actually are going to happen on their own, and engaging patients with their data is going to help. But man, we have a lot of ridiculous delay and stuff in administrative flows, and delay causes harm.
And back to that point, Paul, this is all public information, but 85% of the time, they get an answer back, and the answer is no. The prior auth is not required. So, 8.5 times out of 10, they're getting the no back immediately. And that's actually where the biggest savings is, Paul, to your point. And they can move on with what they need to actually get done instead of waiting the 3 days, to do it. And then the 8% of time that it is, they give an answer back. And then 7% is obviously the big cases, right? The cancer cases and all the other stuff that people have got to manually involve. But my point is like, oh, wow, that's great. Like, so to the nerds and the fellow nerds in the audience, like that's CRD. Like just get CRD in place. And like that becomes a huge savings.
Now, let me make clear though, just in case we're defining no differently. You're defining the is prior auth required, yes or no, not the whether this can proceed, yes or no, right? And they're different.
Right.
I
Yes.
actually argue even the no of yes, prior auth is required, no, this is declined. Even that happening faster at least kicks off the next stage to argue the point for the sake of the patient, or figure out alternative pathways. I feel like the biggest travesty is sitting for 2 weeks where the provider is waiting, and waiting always costs money, right? Not just money in terms of stuff, but like it takes project management and like all that stuff. Like we do technical stuff all the time, and the biggest waste is the coordinating 3 parties on one call at the same time to get something done, right? That's always the longest tail, the longest pole in the tent is getting the right people on the call at the right time. It's not technical. And I think healthcare is very similar. Like I just need an answer, and please may it be like instantaneous. Wouldn't that be before I leave this office? I'd like the answer, right? As opposed to when I get home and I have to start calling you and abuse the administrative staff and the front desk, and then you get paged, and now you can't play golf and all the bad things that happen. Just saying.
Yeah. You always have something to say. So well noted. Okay, so let's switch gears to the final rule that was already extended. And bear with me, I'm going to go through some of the points in case we're not all on the same page. So mandatory APIs for data exchange and additional reporting requirements. So just to summarize, this is what goes into effect the 1st of January in 2027. So prior auth API, payers must offer an API for providers to send and track PA requests electronically. Patient access API enhancements. Payers must include PA decision info in the existing API for patients. Payers must implement an API to share patient data with in-network providers. And then for transparency and reporting, payers must publicly report PA metrics, approvals, and denials, and provide specific reasons for the denials. Payers must report annual metrics on patient use of the patient access API. And for data sharing, seamless sharing of patient data using FHIR standards across payers, providers, and patients to reduce redundant work. So that was a mouthful, but to Ryan, do these regulations apply to all payers? Who's in and who's not in? And should we be concerned that some are not covered?
It applies just to CMS payers. So CMS, so Medicare Advantage, Medicaid, Medicaid managed care, exchange plans. But what's good is that the Blue Cross Blue Shield Association and AHIP have both come out and said, we are going to actually apply these prior auth rules and other rules to all lines of business, including commercial. So the good news is that and kudos to them, by the way, let's extend it, right, to make it happen. They've also made a commitment to the administration that they're going to reduce the number of policies related to prior auth too. Those are two separate issues, but they're related. But the idea here is, how do we figure out a way where this could actually really be everywhere? You did say a mouthful here. And Paul, you went dark, by the way. At least you're a black box to me.
Can you hear me though?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, because I see myself as a black box too, and I can't figure out why. But I'm working on it. But I'm trying. Okay, good. Then we'll leave it at that, and just it's nothing crazy is going on. It's just called technology.
Interop not done right. There you go. That's kind of
seriously.
So I think what people need to take away, Courtney, from this, and I don't necessarily want to get into all the details, is that you need to have an API server. And that server needs to be part of your core operating process. And it's going to be your front door to everything. Public health data exchange, payer data exchange, patient data exchange. So if you don't have things like a development environment, if you don't have things like a test sandbox and like test users, if you haven't figured out how you're actually going through the process of like doing identity and identity proofing and how you actually manage OIDC credentials, like you've got to figure that out. But the good news, and it is an investment, but the good news is that investment's going to pay off in spades because every other sector of healthcare is moving in that same direction. So like, and that's, Courtney, what we're seeing actually in the wild is that there's too many of these data holders who kind of viewed it as a regulatory checkbox and kind of put it in a corner, and they're not realizing like, no, the whole industry is moving this direction. And you can reuse these APIs for multiple purposes. That's really the hope.
Yeah. So are you suggesting that you think we'll see more like voluntary compliance, like as patients gain a stronger voice in accessing their information?
On the patient side, yes. I mean, ChatGPT Health just got launched with our friends with BeWell, and Anthropic just got launched with our friends at HealthyX. And, last I checked, there's 800 billion people on that platform. So like, that feels like a demand signal, right? Like that feels like a pretty good demand signal. And I just got off with somebody today who goes, I just got on Anthropic. It was like the easiest thing I've ever seen. Well, yeah, I think the demand's off the charts. I think some of those websites actually went down because the demand was so high. Like people didn't know this was even a thing. We've been doing it in Karen Alliance. You guys have been doing it forever, 10 years, but they didn't really know, right? They didn't check Apple Health Records or download something. They just didn't know. And now they know. And now they're like, wow, this is amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. Paul, how are you seeing like our community shift in preparation for this?
Well, I think all the prior auth in those APIs, transparency is key, right? Getting things to move faster and that's the like. I think patient access is a different set of stuff that applies to payers. I think the provider side is already well on path for, right? I think that we're actually doing a pretty good job. Ryan has been, I pick on him sometimes, like everybody's seen that, but ultimate cheerleader for patient access, and so we appreciate that. And all the API stuff, we're seeing a shift. It's interesting. The first thing you saw was the grand concern of AI running everything. Then it became very practical for administrative flows in all businesses, right? This isn't a healthcare thing. It was, the salon, doing appointments, like all basic things. And then we're starting to see it get more complicated again and do some fun stuff. So when you start seeing the complicated become simple, right? I think is what you're pointing to, like kind of the Anthropic feedback. That's when things get fun because we forget. Sometimes we forget why we have technology in the first place when it comes to business and process. Is to do things we don't want to do monotonously that something else can do and maybe even do it better, right? So a portal to fax something to is no better than me faxing it to your fax machine. That doesn't feel great. Like can we do this better? And it's fun to see that start to happen, like in earnest, like not just a little bit, a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. It's also important to consider, who's excluded from these rules, which could create potential problems later on, which we've already started to see in some of the TUFCA models. This could include some like drug approval workflows, as well as excluding like smaller health clinics and like safety net providers. How can we operationalize healthcare to be more inclusive of those folks?
Well, I think the barrier to entry to actually get data exchange to work has actually never been lower than it is today. And the reason for that is because we don't have to have all these complicated intermediaries and all this stuff going on, like, and multiple hops and spend a bunch of money. Like we've got folks like on-ramps like Commonwealth and other folks that are out there. And we've also got ability to say, get an API server, get digital identity, and send your APIs and receive APIs. And it's the same APIs and it's great. Like it works. Like it just, to Paul's point, it's easy. Like don't run away from it because it's easy. It's like easy. And the challenge, Courtney, is that I don't think people truly grasp that yet because probably they have day jobs and this is our day job. And so we kind of have grasped it, but like go get your server and let's jump in the game, right? Like we can make this much easier. It is, I mean, again, we're in Karen Alliance. We've been doing this longer in production than as far as Fire APIs are concerned, I think, than any other really sector of the economy. So we've seen it. I've seen it up close for many, many years. And it was really hard at the beginning. Like, Jen Blumenthal was calling people out on Twitter and stuff because they weren't, publishing their Fire API. But like, it's gone from that to like, Jen's going to kill me for saying that, but like, it's gone from that.
No, she's going to cheer that. She loves that.
to the fact that now we've got a situation where no, we can get access to the endpoint. CMS is publishing a directory for Pete's sake. And now folks like you guys and others like the on-ramps can do it. There's 180,000 Fire endpoints in production that folks like BeWell and HealthX and everybody else have connected to. Like, this is great. Let's do that. And it's just never been easier, and it's never been as reusable as it is today too, meaning the data is reusable, the claims data, the clinical data, you can reuse it for multiple purposes, so you don't have to have multiple one-off connections and multiple one-off vendors to do this stuff for you.
Yeah, I think that's right. I also say
Absolutely,
I think
Paul.
that, well, yeah, data connectivity is kind of an equalizer, right? You see the rural health technology thing and trying to get access, trying to get applications into more people's hands that can do provider-like stuff. That stuff doesn't work without data. A small rural clinic in the middle of Montana doing great work with a local population that has the nearest hospital 150 miles away and is often serviced by someone in a biplane. They need to be connected to their data because it is all over the place, right? And now the difference between now and then in terms of, Ryan says it's easier. It's still not easy. It's the easiest it's ever been. But the key difference is, I've been doing this for 15 years, this interop stuff at this scale. 15 years ago, I lied a lot. Like 15 years ago, I'd say connect and it will be a benefit eventually. And 5 years later after that, they were like, I'm not seeing it, right? Now you connect and the answer is different. It's not that I'm not finding data. It's kind of getting too much, right? And so the conversation is flipped. Can you turn some stuff off because we got too much? It's like, no, let's bring better tools to analyze the fire hose. Don't miss data, right? It could be really important, the things you're asking me to suppress by accidental request. Don't suppress, use it better. And I think that the tools that are coming out now are helping do that.
Hey, Courtney, my apologies. I got to hop off the top of the hour. Can I give one spicy thing before we go? Is that okay?
Love spicy.
Please. Yep.
As we look over the next 3 to 5 years, I think the thing that you're going to see more than anything is this battle between proprietary and open. And what I mean by that is Fire APIs are an open standard. It's different than X12, which is proprietary, different than NCPDP, which is proprietary. And we have seen in our consumer lives that Android is now much more popular than iOS, right? It's like a 60-40 split, if I remember correctly. I think what you're going to see, especially because, as we've talked about, people don't want to really worry about this stuff anymore. They just want it to work, is that there's going to be more open source options. And I think people are going to gravitate towards them. And that's going to make it even easier to be able to connect because the industry is going to say, this is what I want to do. I want to adopt these open source standards to make it scale. And I think you're going to see open source communities actually start to pop up. And, we have this, we have Linux, we have all these different things in our consumer lives. We just don't have it in healthcare. We've always had proprietary systems and we've never had really a good open source solutions. And I think that's going to change. That's kind of my spicy way to end it today. So
we love to end spicy. So we'll let you go, but thank you so much for joining us, Ryan. I'm sure we'll be in touch and we'll see you at HIMSS too. I hope. So thank you for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan.
I was going to let Ryan drop off, but we can wrap up the show today. Thank you so much for joining us. Paul and I will be back next month. Guest is TBD, so stay tuned as well as the topic. But we'll be sure to keep it spicy and we'll see you next time. Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Thank you all.